Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at another great question asked by one of my great Patreons. And because Venture Fanatic was very interested what could and would happen if Ainz Ooal Gown would ever lose his friends and humanity, I'm going to take a closer look at this very topic. But before I do so, I say thank you very much to my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as to all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Thanks guys. Now with that said, Ainz Ooal Gown has already lost his friends, and at least part of his humanity. So we are not talking about something abstract here, but about something very realistic that has already, albeit partially, happened. Ainz Ooal Gown was left without friends for years, and aside from meeting them offline a few times during a guild meetup, he just met them online, until they didn't play Yggdrasil anymore. Due to real life stuff going on, they had to focus, of course. And without wife or family, Ainz had already nothing but his memories of his friends as motivation to continue, even while still being a human. Now, after being transported to the new world, two things happened. His emotions got dampened, and his friend's creation, the NPCs of the Great Tomb of Nezarec, became real, living, breathing, and thinking beings. Something that made the only things Ainz had left from his friends very real. He feels bound to them, because he sees them as the children of his dear friends. And even after being rendered emotionally inert, albeit just to a degree, and thus being prevented from feeling new strong emotions, Ainz is still enraged if his friends are insulted in any way, shape or form, which means that Ainz still greatly cherishes his friends' memories. But, and we still don't have to speculate about it, Ainz as an immortal being has at least potentially infinite amount of time to forget his friends. And he already did. Although the situation was somewhat different in the Evil Eye bonus volume, where Ainz Ooal Gown had been also transported to the new world at the time of Yggdrasil Online server shutdown, Ainz Ooal Gown, in contrast to the canon story, was totally alone and had initially no one but Evil Eye, for whom he fought and killed the Dragon Lord Cure Elim Los Malvar. But then he refounded and had rebuilt Ainz Ooal Gown, his former guild, with beings from the new world, and for over 200 years he had experienced countless adventures with his new friends. But once his former guild was transported to the new world, 200 years after Ainz had been transported here himself, he had already forgotten it, despite having founded his current guild in the memory of and with the name of his original guild. With that now said, Ainz Ooal Gown can, and in a way has already lost the memory of his friends, but he also made new friends, and in general they had been a force of good. Now let's say this also happens bit by bit. The once vivid memory of his friends became duller, weaker, and more obscure as time progresses in the canon storyline. Just as Suturo had made new friends in his alternative timeline who replaced the influence, the memory, and the very being of his friends. The memory of his friends are now replaced bit by bit by the only frequent social contacts he has, the NPCs of the Great Tomb of Nezarec. And gradually they change from something to protect in the name and the memory of his friends to something that is worthy of protection and somehow connected to his brief episode, this weird past where Ainz was once a human, something that Ainz now goes decades without even thinking about. And with the search for his friends leading nowhere, Ainz is now truly on his own, and judging from his rather unopinionated personality, his environment and his karma value, and of course his sheer power, there is nothing that would stop him from taking the more radical advice of his NPCs. Ainz already prioritized Demiurge's efforts over the well-being of an entire kingdom once, and Albedo and Demiurge suggested that the only way to deal with the kingdom of Rhea's ties is to annihilate almost its entire population, and Ainz already had agreed to it. And the major reason why Project Utopia is even a thing, and why Ainz Ooal Gown treats the inhabitants of his kingdom so very well, is because he wants to bring glory to the name of Ainz Ooal Gown, that of the guild, and thereby to his former friends. And his most selfless act, the saving of Enri and Nemu, was done in the memory of Touchme, who once saved Ainz. Without all of that, Ainz Ooal Gown would become more and more the evil overlord he just pretends to be now. With his last vestiges of humanity slowly fading into obscurity, Ainz already committed unspeakable acts of atrocities, would even more so, not only to his enemies, but more and more to his kingdom's population, if it serves the greater good of his NPCs. Suggestions from Lupus Regina Beta that would see the inhabitants of the Sorcerer Kingdom being reduced to the status of a farm animal who should give up everything they have in service of their masters would be increasingly common. Once Ainz Ooal Gown loses the memory of his friends, mercy and compassion, albeit by proxy, would slowly slip away, and Ainz Ooal Gown's deeds would become a reflection of his NPCs. So aside from some good acts Bestonia, Nigredo, Sebas or Yuri Alpha would demand, Demiurge's merciless and cruel outlook on the world, as well as Albedo's disinterest in everything not Ainz related, would come to dominate the decision-making process of Ainz. And again, this seems to be a trend already, judging from the sheer increase in scope of the atrocities Ainz had committed, from blackmailing an old lady in need, to agreeing to send a few workers to their certain doom, to unleashing his dark youngs, to the destruction of the kingdom of Rhea's ties. Ainz's actions become more and more cruel and increasingly bigger in scope. And with the goal of his NPCs being world domination, this is likely only to increase, so the entire continent might face an age of merciless death and despair for at least 100 years before more players would arrive, and could potentially slay the evil overlord. The alternative is that Ainz, via the loss of his friend's memory, would also lose gradually his reason to heed their advices and become more and more assertive with its own goals and ideas. If Demiurge stops becoming the child of one of his closest friends and starts to be his subordinate, who somehow was connected to that weird time that Ainz was once a human, something that he didn't thought of in decades, chances are that Ainz either becomes more dominating, turning his true goals into Nazarik's guiding force, or, and we also have seen elements of this as recently as the end of the 14th novel, Ainz would just simply decide to not be stressed anymore by all of this world domination nonsense and just decides to leave for long and longer trips, as Momon, as a new adventurer, or just as himself, because without his friend's memory, he loses the reason to truly engage with the great tomb of Nazarik's day-to-day affairs. Let Renna or Albedo or Pandora handle it. Let Pandora pretend to be him while the real Ainz is busy flying to the moon or somewhere else. Let's see how Anil handles another guy immune to electricity. And One Piece jokes aside, these were pretty much the three directions Ainz Ooal Gown's life would, could, and already had begun to take a turn, now that his past life grows ever more distant, and again, so far, we only have seen his development over just 2 years. So, let's see what will happen in a couple of decades or so, and I personally would love to see him becoming an adventurer, someone who travels the world and enjoys all of its wonders. But what are your opinions about all of this? Let me know down in the comment section. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Bad Guy Ye, Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia the Second, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Hat, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantom, Personage, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc War Boss, Rock Ed Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.